Welcome to the 11th video in the Colored Pencil course, brought to you by thevirtualinstructor.com. Landscape Drawing Part 1. In this module, we'll begin our look at completing a landscape drawing with colored pencils. In this first part, we'll explore the background, and in our case, the sky, and much of the middle ground, which in our example will be a grouping of trees. We will approach the landscape in a specific order, working on elements that are furthermost away first. For this reason, we will complete the background first, followed by the middle ground, and lastly, the foreground. Working in this order will allow for layering of details over completed areas, increasing the illusion of depth that is desired. Here's a look at our finished result. Again, we'll start with the background first. When it's complete, we'll move on to the middle ground, and when it's complete, we'll address the foreground last. We will be working on toned and textured paper, Mi-Teint's pastel paper by Canson, which will influence the method in which the colored pencils are applied to the surface. This paper comes in a variety of different tones. Textured papers are often used for colored pencil drawing. A coarse tooth, or texture, allows for greater control of the intensity and layering of the color. One drawback to working on textured paper is the amount of material that is used. Heavier applications of colored pencils are required to build up the color to achieve a painted appearance. However, many colored pencil artists are willing to apply more material in exchange for greater control of the color. Toned paper allows the artist to make comparisons of the values as they are applied to the surface. The tonality of the paper will also play a role in the perceived overall tonality of the completed image. Toned papers will also allow contrasting colors to pop or stand out to a greater intensity. When textured papers that are also toned are used with colored pencils, consider that some of the paper color may show through in areas when the image is complete. Let's take a look at this process now. I'll begin by lightly sketching out the contour lines of the main elements in the scene. This includes the grouping of trees, the small shed that is in the center of the image, and a line to indicate where the foreground begins. Then we'll begin by addressing the background first. In other words, we're going to start at the top of the paper and work downward. I'll begin by applying light peach using directional lines. This is a light application. I'll layer over the top of the light peach next using cloud blue, again trying to keep my lines at a diagonal. This is going to allow us to slowly build up the colors that are observed in the photo reference. I'll go ahead and determine the location of the sun, and I'll use cream to do so. The center portion of the sun should be very light in value, but it's surrounded by yellow. I'll use lemon yellow for this. I'll begin to also lighten up the top portions of the sky using white. Again, all our applications at this point are very light. I'll continue layering the white and the cloud blue until I get a consistency that I'm happy with. To address the warmer tones on the bottom portion of the sky, blush pink is used. Cream is again layered on top of the blush pink, coming outward from the sun. We're building up colors gradually here. Again, blush pink is used, this time for some of the initial shapes of the distant clouds. Lilac is also used to create some shadowed areas within the clouds. These colors are burnished using a cloud blue. With each layer of color that's added, the intensity increases. White is used on the sun to make the intensity of that value a bit lighter. White is also used to create highlights of some of the clouds that are visible in the photo reference. This color is warmed up a bit using the lemon yellow. This process is repeated as these shapes are observed. Heavy pressure is now being applied to the pencil. Here's a close-up of the area around the sun. You can see how the texture of the paper and the tonality of the paper is affecting the way that the colored pencils are applied to the surface. It takes more material, more layers of application to build up the color to a painterly appearance. Pieces of the texture underneath will also show through. We'll continue to develop some of the shapes of the clouds, this time using the lilac. The clouds that are closer to the viewer are going to be darker in value. After these initial layers of color have been added, we'll burnish them using a cloud blue. This will make the clouds appear more natural. A heavy application of cloud blue is being applied here. The light source from the clouds is originating from the sun, so it's going to be warmer and lighter in value underneath these clouds. We'll use the blush pink here to achieve a highlighted side. The intensity at the bottom of the sky is also pushed a bit further. True blue is used in areas on some of the clouds to make the shadowed side feel a bit more natural. This will add variety to the clouds and add a sense of depth to them. These areas are burnished using a colorless blender. A very light application of Spanish orange is used in a couple of areas. These areas are next burnished using the cream. Cloud blue is worked downward from the sky, creating a transition zone somewhere in the middle of the sky. Cream is used upward into that blue area to smooth out the transition. At this point, our color is becoming more intense and strengthening on the surface. It's only after many layers are applied that we can achieve this ability to burnish, especially when working on a textured surface like we are here. At this point, we can begin to put heavy pressure on every application that we place on the surface. This includes areas that are burnished using the white and cream. This will help eradicate some of the texture that's undesired in the image. To push the contrast a bit further, 70% cool gray is used on a selected number of clouds. These areas are burnished using a colorless blender. A few areas of highlight are added on the distant clouds as well, using a white, and then the yellow that radiates from the sun is intensified using lemon yellow. Next, it's time to move our attention to the middle ground. At this point, the sky might seem very light and not very interesting, but this is because the tonality of the paper is very similar to that of the sky. As we start to add the layer of trees that happen below, the sky will become more intense as the contrast increases. To create these areas of trees, we're going to follow a process. First, we'll lay down olive green, Then we'll follow that with dark umber, layered on top with indigo blue. Then we'll burnish areas using white and a colorless blender. This first grouping of trees is more distant, so more white is used to burnish. We'll also address the small area filled that happens just underneath with a bit of beige and dark umber. A little bit of sienna brown is added here too to add a bit of variety. Then this area is burnished using the beige. Our process again here is to first put down olive green with a medium to light application. We'll do this all across the area of middle ground with the large grouping of trees that occurs there. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and establish some of the highlighted areas using lime peel. These areas are more frequent closer to the sun. Of course, the tops of the trees also are receiving more light. A bit of light is also making it to the bottom portion of the trees. We'll go ahead and establish these areas with white. Then it's time to establish the shadowed areas that exist. We'll start with dark umber. This is followed by a medium to heavy application of indigo blue. It may be necessary to go back and re-establish some of the highlighted areas. In this case, I'm doing so with lime peel. Then, the darker areas are burnished using a colorless blender. To add a bit of variety at the lower portion of the trees, olive green is used over the top of the burnished areas. We'll continue this process working from left to right. If you are, of course, left-handed, you may choose to work from the right to the left. We'll intensify some of the areas of highlight close to the sun using a bit of chartreuse. We can also make the shadows a bit more intense here as well by layering the indigo blue and the dark umber. As we continue the process, we'll attempt to stay organic with our marks, trying not to make a too manufactured look on the surface. Generally speaking, darker areas are better burnished using a colorless blender or other types of burnishing techniques, where lighter areas are better burnished using a white or cream. The last portion of trees on the far right side has a bit more light hitting it. Perhaps it's because of the break in the trees. For this reason, there'll be more areas where the lime peel is used. The last bit of highlight is added using the lime peel. So what did we discuss in this module? We first took a look at an ordered approach to drawing a landscape with colored pencils. This included starting with the background first, then moving on to the middle ground, and in the next video we'll take a look at completing the foreground. We also took a look at working with textured and toned papers and how it affects the application of colored pencils. In the next video in the series, we'll complete this drawing.